start. Welcome, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for our webinar about the background check information system. My name is Rachel Leventhal-Weiner, and I'm the Office of Early Childhood's Chief Research and Planning Officer. In order to access live closed captioning during today's event, in the right-hand corner of your screen, you can click on the CC button and select the language that you prefer to see live captioning. And this event will be available interpreted in Spanish within a few days. Thanks again for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to turn the webinar over to our Chief Counsel, Michael Curley.
Thanks so much, Rachel, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for a webinar on the OEC background check information system. I first wanted to start by just acknowledging that I know the transition to this new system has been challenging for many providers and for us at OEC. And I know especially when you're trying to keep programs staffed and trying to hire new staff, it can be really difficult with the delays and adjusting to the new system. So we recognize that at OEC, and we're working very hard to support providers through this transition to this new system. And this webinar is part of that. We're following up to go over some of the most common questions and provide some demonstration of using the system. And hopefully, after today's presentation, you'll get some of your questions answered, and we'll go over where to find more information and where to submit questions if you have more questions. So here's our agenda for today, and we're going to introduce you to some of the folks at OEC that are working on BCIS. This is not the whole team. This is just a few of the folks within OEC that are helping with BCIS. We'll go over some definitions and explanations of some of the terms in BCIS that may be confusing, where to find information and guides on our website, some of the most common questions. And then the majority of this presentation will be a demonstration where we walk through how to use BCIS, whether you're a child care facility administrator or someone who needs to submit their own background check, a staff member or other person in child care that needs to get an OEC background check. And then we will go over some key takeaways and a few other helpful pieces of information. And then at the end, time allowing, we'll go over some questions. You can put questions into the Q&A. We do have a lot to cover, so I don't think we'll have a lot of time to go over questions at the end, but we will see how much time we have left and answer some questions. And then any questions that you put into the Q&A, we will certainly review those and continue to add them to our frequently asked questions on the website and also directly in BCIS. And we'll go over that today, how to find the frequently asked questions section in BCIS. So before we move on, I did want to introduce some of our team members. First, I wanted to introduce a new member of the team, Jill Marini, who comes to OEC with a lot of great background and experience. I'll let her talk about that briefly. And she's just joined as of last week, as of Friday, as our new background checks manager. So Jill, could you say hello?
Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. I don't know if you can hear me and Mike talking at the same time. I certainly can. But my name is Jill Marini. I have almost 20 years of experience working in federal child care programs, which deal a great deal of background checks, and we have been working those things out for many, many years. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be part of the team, and I will tell you all, having a backdoor look at what's going on, I think you will be very excited when it's up and running and fully operational.
Thanks so much, Jill. I'm really excited to have Jill joining our team. In addition to the experience that she talked about, she has the experience as a child care provider, so she's seen it from your side of things, which is really incredibly helpful for us at OEC. Next, I wanted to introduce our dedicated help desk lead. We have a number of folks within OEC that are helping with our help desk, but we've hired a dedicated staff member who is his primary role. And I just wanted to introduce him and have him say hello. So Robert Doga.
I see Robert is unmuted, but we don't have audio for him.
Okay, looks like we may be having a technical glitch there. So
Can you hear me?
okay, now we can hear you, Robert. Go ahead.
Okay, my apologies. I said good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Doga. I've been with this agency for 2 months now. I work with the help desk. I do analysis and support. I've worked with some of you already, and I look forward to working with everyone going forward in the future.
Thank you, Robert. Sorry, my computer lost connection for a moment, but next I wanted to turn to our also relatively new member of the team, Dwani Pandya, our new IT manager.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dwani. I am very happy to be a part of the BCIS team. I have been adding capacity on the back end, so I have not worked with many of you on the front end of things as Robert and Mike have, but I am very happy to be here and supportive of any initiatives that are needed going forward.
Thanks so much, Dwani. And next, one of our lead IT developers, Usman Ali, who will be going through the presentation with me today. Usman, can you say hello?
Hey everybody, good afternoon. We built this application and we're ready to demo second time. Really excited and really excited to bring to you guys all the new functionality to and some of the hidden functionality that we will discuss and demo today.
Great, thanks, Usman. So I did want to go over just some explanations of a few things here that I've seen come up in questions, and I think it would be helpful for people to get an explanation of this. And we will post these slides so that they'll be available. So you don't need to take notes or write all this down. We'll make this available on our website along with the other guides that we'll go over in a moment. So there's a few different numbers that are needed to submit an OEC background check, and we have seen some confusion about this, and I can see why it can be confusing with the different numbers and figuring out which one is for which purpose. So the BCIS ID number is a number that when you create your individual BCIS account and you log in and enter your demographic information, then the BCIS ID number will show in the top left-hand corner of your screen when you are logged into BCIS. And as you can see here in the last bullet, it's also important to know that there's two state systems that you need to access in order to submit an OEC background check. One is our Office of Early Childhood Background Check Information System, BCIS, and the other is the Connecticut Criminal History Request System. There's a typo there, it says Information System, we'll get that corrected. And that's the state police system. So that's important to know. There's BCIS and CCHRS. BCIS is OEC system and CCHRS is the state police system. So the BCIS ID number is a number that shows in the top left corner when you're logged into BCIS. The next number that you need is called a service code. And when you walk through the steps that we're going to go over in this presentation, you'll see that when you select which type of child care facility you are working, then BCIS will tell you which service code you should use depending on which type of child care facility. You then take that service code and click a link to go to the state police system, CCHRS. And when you enter that service code and enter your information into CCHRS, when you finished enrolling, you'll get an applicant tracking number. So that's the third number here. And we're going to go over all these steps and see how you start in BCIS, you go to the state police system, CCHRS, and then you return to BCIS with your applicant tracking number so you can schedule a fingerprinting appointment. So those are those different numbers that can get confusing, and we've seen a lot of questions about that and how to find the service code or how to find the applicant tracking number. So we're going to walk through all that in this presentation, and hopefully that will be more clear. So next I wanted to go over how you can find information about BCIS and our guides, and those are all on our website. So in order to find these BCIS guides, you can go to the OEC website, click licensing, and then background checks. And then once you're on the background check section, you can click BCIS, and that opens up these menu items where we have guides on how to use BCIS. There are two different guides here. One is for an individual who needs to get their own background check and the steps to create their account and submit the information for their background check. The other guide is how to use BCIS as a child care facility program administrator. So this is for program directors and HR managers and child care facility operators who need to manage their entire staff roster. So that's the administrator, and then the other role is for those individual staff members. So first, we're going to go through the administrator role. And you can see we have a video here that walks through this process. And there are links here where you can jump specifically to the item that you would like to watch the video. So if you don't want to go through the entire video, you can skip to just adding staff to your roster, for example. And there are steps here on how to do each task. We see a lot of questions about how to add staff to the roster. And a very common question is when someone's trying to add staff to the roster and they get an error message that says there are multiple records in the system. And so when that error message comes up, it means that we have multiple records for that same person in our system, which we're working through correcting that data. But for now, we still have a lot of those cases where we have multiple records for the same person. And when you get that error message, it's very important to stop and not proceed to add the person or invite the person to BCIS until that gets corrected. So if you encounter that error message, you should go to the OEC help desk, and the link to the help desk is at the end of this presentation and is also on our website. And you can open a new ticket to submit a ticket, and you can provide the staff member's name and date of birth so that we can go into the system and correct the duplicate record. So that's a very common question. If you're trying to add someone to the roster and you get that error message, please submit a ticket to us at OEC with their name and date of birth so we can correct it for you. And then we'll update you in this system to let you know when it's been corrected and you can proceed to add them to the roster. So the steps to add staff to your roster are here in this guide. The video walks through them as well. And in a moment here, I'm going to turn it over to Usman to show us how this actually looks in BCIS. One other note that I'll just mention before we do that is on this screen, when you're searching for a person to add to your roster, you would enter their first name, last name, date of birth, and either their social security number or zip code. The reason for this is to make sure that you're matching to the correct person. And we want to be able for you to add them to your roster if they're already in our system. So you would search them here, And then if you locate them, you can add them to the roster. And this is where if you get that error message, you would submit a ticket to let us know that there are multiple records for the same person. One other way that you can search for someone if they have already created a BCIS account is by their BCIS ID number. So we talked about that in the beginning. Once they've already created their account and entered their demographic information, they will have a BCIS ID number that shows in the top left of their screen. And that can be provided to the employer so you can search for that person in the system. If they've never created an account, then they won't have a BCIS ID number. And so you would need to search by first name, last name, date of birth, and either the social security number or zip code. And one other note is just that the social security number is not a required field. So every record doesn't have that social security number. So you can also try searching by the zip code if it's not finding them by the social security number or if that's not listed in our system. The last part of these steps on this guide is inviting a manager to assist with roster management. So this would be someone who can access the entire roster, and you can click on the program tab to invite a program manager who can assist with managing the entire roster. So this is the guide for administrators, as I mentioned. I'm going to turn it over to Usman to show us how that looks in the system, and then we'll come back to the guide for individuals.
Thank you very much, Mike. Let me share my screen. So I do have a demo account that I log into the web. I'm gonna log in with that account, and what you see is there's we have the option to add person. So if you're looking to add a person into your roster, you would have to click on add person to do that. But before I go too far, we just want to make sure if you're a program admin, you do not need to add yourself as a program manager in order to add somebody to a roster. If you're a program director, you have the full maximum permissions in the system. So if you're a program director or if you have a program manager role, you would head over to add a person. Once you click on it, this is where Mike was showing you can search individual by first name, last. You can use three fields are required, and then zip code or last for the social security. If you have any of those, you can enter those. If you have a BCS ID, then none of the first name, last name, date of birth, any of those fields are not required. Only thing you would have to do is search them by BCS ID. But if you do have it, let's say if I do search somebody and we don't find that person in our BCIS system, what system will tell you is that we do not find that individual in that in our system, and it will give you the option to invite that individual into our system after that. So in order to invite somebody, at the bottom, after when you hit search, it will show this card basically, and in there it describes like if you think the person already exists in the system and you're not finding it, please contact us and we can look that person up and give you the right information. And if you still don't find it, then you go ahead and invite that individual into our system. So I would select my demo program that I'm going to use as a dummy data, and then what that person role will be, and then just the email of that individual who needs to get invited into our system. So I'm just gonna say test random email, but this will be the actual email that you would be entering. And you hit set invite, and the system will tell you that if the invite went out successfully, if it did, that individual will be receiving an email, which this over, and I'll show you guys what it will look like. The individual actually will receive an email with the link where they would start their registration process. So Mike, do you want to go show the documentation of that individual, and then I can proceed with the demo?
Sure. Yeah, one thing, can you back up to that last screen for 1 minute, Usman?
Yep.
So one other thing that I just wanted to highlight, because I have seen some questions about this, is when you are logged in as a program administrator for your roster management, you still have those tabs on the left side that say person detail and background check. And so the reason those are there when you're logged in as a program administrator is if you're going to submit your own background check as a program director who works with children in the program, you can use those tabs to submit your own background check. That's not to enter person detail about staff members. It's only for if you're using the same account to manage your roster and also submit your own background check as a program director. If you choose, you also have the option to use a different account for you as an individual. If you have a shared email that's for the program, childcare facility at mychildcareprogram.com or something, that's a shared email that you want to use as the main account for the entire roster, you can use that as the program administrator account. And then you could have your individual account, Michael at childcareprogram.com. You could have a separate account for you as an individual. That's a choice. If you want to use the same account as a program director, you can submit your own background check using those tabs on the left side.
Just to add to what Mike is saying, also, if you did end up entering your staff information into personal detail, but it was your account, open up a help desk ticket with us or give us a call and we can fix that. So what we can do is unlink your account from if you enter the staff information accidentally. So we do have capability to fix it in case if that data was entered. Mike, you want to go ahead, take the share and go through the documentation on our website?
Yep, sounds good.
Thank you.
So yeah, next we'll go over what we were just talking about. So Sman showed us how to invite someone and send them that invitation. And then the next step will be for that individual to get the invitation and create their account in BCIS. So the program administrator sent them an invitation, and now the individual staff member receives that email invite. And again, our guide here, just like the administrator guide, there's a video here that walks through all of these steps, and there's links to jump to specific parts of the process. And the first step is to get that email, create the account with the password criteria, and then go through the tabs to enter their demographic information, any alias or other name that's ever been used, and 5 years of address history. So the individual, once they log in, have to enter all of this information for their own person detail, and it's important to include 5 years of address history. One other question that we have seen come up is that the system will show how many months you've entered, and it's important to enter 60 months or 5 years of address history before you proceed. Then once the individual staff member has entered that information, filled out all of those tabs, then they can let their employer know that they've created their account. And if they're already in our system and they have a current background check on file, then they're all set until they're due for their next background check. If they're brand new to OEC background checks or they haven't had a background check in more than 5 years, then they would be due for a new background check and the employer needs to send them a background check request through BCIS. So once the individual has entered this information, they can then let the employer know they've created their account, and the employer can go back to the Add Person tab to search for them, and they can either use the BCIS ID number. Now that the account has been created, the staff member can provide that, and you can use that to search and add them to your roster, or you could search with the same criteria that you used before, the first name, last name, and date of birth and social or zip code. So that's an important piece that I think, not everyone fully understood. And this was something that has been updated, this step of the guide here, that once the account is created, the staff member can provide that BCIS ID number to the employer so that they can go back to the search screen and search by their BCIS ID number. And as Sman mentioned, on that screen, when you're adding someone to your roster, if you have the BCIS ID number, that's all you need. You don't need to enter any of these other fields if you have the BCIS ID number. So once the staff member creates their account and has their BCIS ID number, they can give that to the childcare facility, and the administrator can use that alone. That's all they need to search, and then they can add them to the roster. So once that's done, as I said, if you have a current background check on file already, then you're all set. But if you're due for a background check, or if it's your first time getting an OAC background check, then you need to go through the next steps in the process. And that starts by clicking on the background check tab on the left side, and then going through the forms and fingerprint submission. And as I mentioned before, once you get through these forms, you have to select the type of childcare facility where you're working. And once you select that, the system will automatically give you the correct service code to enter into the state police system, CCHRS. So you then click the link to CCHRS, and then it takes you out of the OEC system to the state police system that looks like this. You enter the service code that was provided to you when you select your facility type. Enter that into CCHRS. Then you enter your demographic information into the state police system, CCHRS. And then once you've done that and click submit, it will provide you an applicant tracking number. You then take that applicant tracking number and go back to BCIS and indicate how you will submit fingerprints and enter that applicant tracking number. OEC strongly recommends digital fingerprinting through 211 childcare. And when you select that option in BCIS, then you can schedule your appointment with 211 childcare directly in BCIS. We know that there's not always an appointment available in your area soon enough. So if you need to find an appointment sooner, then you can find one available through 211 childcare. You can also get fingerprinted at a local police department or state police barracks or state police headquarters. I'll talk about this more later in the presentation, but we're working to add additional capacity for 211 fingerprinting. And again, we strongly recommend digital fingerprints and not paper fingerprint cards. Paper fingerprint cards are still an option for now, but we really strongly discourage them because they take a lot longer and there are a lot of rejected fingerprints with the paper fingerprint cards. So I'll turn it back over to Usman to show us what that looks like in BCIS.
Thank you, Mike. Let me start. So I will start with the process where an individual will receive an email from the provider saying, hey, you need to register with BCIS and fill in the demographic information. When an individual receives an email, this is what it looks like. They have the option to click on the link, or what I like to do, I just copy paste it into the browser. Once you copy paste it, it will check in the system if you already had an account with BCIS or are you a brand new user. So for example, I just used a random email. For that reason, it's asking me to register in BCIS. All of these fields are required: phone, email, password. is required fields, and do not change the BCIS code, because if you change it, it will fail to register. I'm just going to fill in random data. Let me go find out the email that I entered. And you do have the option to change the email. If the provider sends you an email and that's not the email you want to use, and you want to use XYZ, and you got an email on ABC, you definitely have the option to change it when you're registering it. As far as the option, you have to meet the requirements, and all the requirements are listed below. As soon as you start meeting the requirements, it will start turning gray, and then you can, purple, you can start seeing it. So once you meet the requirements, all of them, will look good, and then you would have to type in the password below too. The icon you can use to see if you're writing in the right password or not, and then if you can click on it, will hide the password. Once you go ahead and click the link register, what it does is it will send you a verification email. If you read on the right side, we have a little bit of description what it will happen next, and you will receive a verification email. The reason we send the email, we just want to make sure it's a legit email before we activate your account. So I'm going to hit register. If the registration was successful, you'll see a pop-up green one, and at the same time, it can take up to 10 minutes to receive the email into your account. And if you don't receive it, then let us know. But once you do receive the email should look like this. It will say, welcome to BCIS, and verify your account. And you do have the option to click on it, or you can copy the link, either or. I'm going to go ahead and copy the link and paste it in there. So what this did is, always look for the pop-ups, like on the right side, they're green, red, or yellow. They basically will tell you what's happening when you're active clicking on a link or searching for something or saving the information. So anything that's like saving data to our application, it will always be green. So now it's indicating my account is verified after I pasted the link. Now I should be able to log into the system, the email that I used, and the password. One other thing we see is when people not able to log into the system, they do have the option to reset their password right from the application. If you still can't log in and you reset the password and can't get in, you can reach out to our help desk or call our help desk. But you can also self-service the password by resetting it by yourself. So you can just click password reset and just click forget password, and it'll send you a link where you can enter the brand new password again. But for now, I just created an account. So I'm going to log into our system. So this is what individual will see, or a person would see when they get invited to BCIS. There's no BCIS ID. This is where the BCIS ID is, and then the status will be right below it. So when individual log in, they can see what their status is. But in order to obtain the BCIS ID, they're required to fill in demographic information. So you can get to this demographic information by clicking the personal detail. So if you are any other tab, you can just click personal detail. Or if you just log into our system right away bring you to demographic by default, if you're a normal user to our system. So in order to obtain a BCIS ID, you do have to enter demographic information. And once you start entering your demographic information, we have built-in validation rules. So for example, if you don't know what data is required and what is not required, you can just click in it. If anything is required, once you click and click out, it will turn red if it's required. If it's not required, it will not turn red. So let's say DOB is required, gender is definitely required, and for example, social security will be required. So I'm going to enter a DOB, and if there are some business requirement where the person can't be younger than 16 or 18, based on those requirements, system will automatically notify you if you're trying to enter a data that's not allowed in our system. So I'm going to go ahead, select gender, ID type. You have multiple options. these are drop downs, and in the drop down, Mike, you want to?
Sure, yeah, I was just going to add here that, some people are not sure what ITIN, that stands for individual tax ID number. So in some cases, someone might not have a social security number, but they may have an individual tax ID number. So if that's the case, they can enter that. And then, as you saw, there is also an option if the social security number or ITIN is not available at all, then there is an option to click unavailable.
And one thing is, once you submit this information, you cannot change it. In order to change it right now, you would have to contact us, especially for demographic information. And so when you hit save, it does tell you, once you hit confirm this, the information you enter in the demographic, you're not allowed to change it. But if you do want to change it, you can go back and change that information. But I'm gonna go ahead and hit confirm. Once I hit confirm, the alias and address tabs get enabled, and it automatically brings me to alias tab. If you do have any alias, go ahead and enter it. If you don't have to, but every time when you enter alias, it will require you to hit confirm. We just want to make sure it's the right data. Once you do, the data does get submitted to our system. At this point, if you don't see the BCIS ID because you hit demographic information, you can refresh the page. If you log out and log back in, you'll be able to see the BCIS ID. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the refresh page, and what it will do is it will bring the BCIS ID from the system. So because I hit save on that demographic information, that generated my BCIS ID. Okay. Mike, do you have?
I was just going to add, I think that's a good tip in general. If something doesn't seem to be working, or you're trying something and it seems like it should work, sometimes if you try refreshing the page, you're able to proceed.
Yep. So next thing is once you're done with the alias, we do have a prevention in our system where we try to avoid duplicate data. So if you try to enter duplicate data into our system does detect. So if it's duplicate, it's gonna let us know. If it's not gonna add it. So it tells you in the system that you're trying to add duplicate data. Next one is address history. This is where Mike mentioned you do have to enter 5 years address history in order to start a background check. There's a start background check button. If you don't enter it, or you can click by background check to start a background check. But if you don't have the address history, it's always going to kick you back to address information because there's no history. So what I will do is I will enter one record. The first record always supposed to be the current address, and then you add all the other rest of the address history into the system. So I'm going to just breeze through it, and we have a drop down. So just South Carolina. And once I enter the address into the system, if my 2005, if the address history is 5 years old, if we have the 5 years history, you'll see this. It's right now in red. In the future, we will make it green, so this way it's not an error. This is definitely basically telling you did enter more than 5 years address history. But if it's less, you will see it will just show you the number. But red does not mean it's an error. Basically, just do a total count of months that you entered into the address. So there is no limit how many addresses you can enter. Mike, do you want to add anything before I move on to address?
No, I think that sounds good. It's you enter the last 5 years. We don't need more than that. So as long as you've entered any addresses for the past 5 years and you have a total of 60 months or more, then you're all set with the address information.
So if you guys noticed, once I enter the 5 years address, as soon as the system detects that you did enter 5 years, the start background check button gets enabled, which is under address information. You can click this to start your background check, or you can click on the left side, you can click on the background check button. So you can click on any of them to start a background check process. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. Once I do, this whole wizard, which will collect your DCF forms, FBI forms, how you're going to submit your fingerprints, and allow you to book the appointment through our system. What I'm going to do is just click next, and I will fill in my colleague's name. And today's date, when you're submitting these forms, it will be the date when the forms are submitted. Okay. And I'm gonna do that again, colleague's name, and this is where the actual if you're the individual who needs a background check, this will be your information. Once you agree to the forms, you hit next. This is where I think a lot of folks are getting confused. And Mike was explaining, once you select your facility type, right now by default, there's nothing at the bottom. But as soon as you select your facility type, there's a code that changes dynamically, and there's different code for different facility types. So right now, this one is ending with 9C91. If I go ahead and change it to something, the code changes. So at this point, you have to stop, and you need to copy this code, and then it needs to go over to CCHRS website. And if you right click on it, open it, this will open up the website. And in this website, you are required to enter this code. Once you enter the code, so this is OEC group childcare. So once you enter the code and hit submit service code, this will automatically recognize the application type, and once it does, you hit yes, this looks good, and you're required to fill in all this information. Once you enter all this information and you submit the enrollment, you will get what's called applicant tracking number. Applicant tracking number is how we track your background in the system, so we can always pull it from the state system and show you the latest status. So if you're current or any other status. So once you do, after submitting your CCHR information, submitting it, don't close the page that you are on. Even if you close it, you can always, click on background check, and you can get back to this page again. And once you do, you want to fill in the applicant tracking number that you received from the CCHR system. So I'm just going to enter a random one for now, which is supposed to be 10 letters. So if you're entering less, we can tell you you're entering less.
And one note I wanted to add there on the CCHRS system, the required fields are the ones that are shown in blue. So those are the fields that must be completed in order to submit, and the ones in green are optional fields. If you have that information, it's good to enter, but it's not required. And then you will get a tracking number, and they usually start with 21T. That's what the tracking number looks like. So you know. And then I just also wanted to add that, right now, this is the way the process works. You have to get the service code from our system, click this link to go to the state police system, enter the information there, get the tracking number, come back to our system and enter it here. We are working with the state police to connect those systems so that back and forth will not be necessary, but that's going to be in the future. It's going to take some development for the two systems to be connected. And so in the meantime, you do have to enter your information in both systems.
Okay, so once you're done with that applicant tracking number and you entered it into our system, you do have the option, if you need to book an appointment and you haven't booked it with any agency or 211 or state police or anyone, you can book it through our system. I'll take you through that process. But other than that, we have other options that you can go to a police department. When you do, and if you already did your fingerprints in our system, you will need to select digital fingerprint at police department, or if you go to a straight trooper. And also, which we strongly don't recommend, paper fingerprint cards sent by mail, high rejection rate. If you read it, we do have description, like they're pretty high. Or the last option is, if you already did your fingerprint card and submitted to us, but we don't have your DCF forms, FBI forms, then you can come into our system and make sure you go through the system and fill in the applicant tracking number, and then just select fingerprint already submitted and scheduled. But for today's demo, I'm just gonna go show you guys the scheduling part. So I'm going to hit next. When I hit next, this is the last step of this application where you can pick any location. These are very small set of locations because this is a test system, but on the live website, you do get large collection where you can go through. So today I'm gonna pick the north, and then you have to pick the reasoning for fingerprint, and this is how the system is gonna look through the system and find you the available dates. If there's any dates is available, then choose a date will show up, and in there it will highlight it in green. So once you select the green calendar, then the time will come up, and then these are all the available slots that you can pick from. And once you pick through this, what this will do is it will automatically schedule your appointment with 211, and it will also send all the applicant tracking and your name and all that information over to 211. So when you go there, they will have all that information on you. We do not send it to state police or state trooper. This is only for 211 if you go through 211.
Yeah, so that's a really great point, Usman. So, on the last step, you can choose to schedule with 211 or to go to a local police department. You can click, our preferred recommended option is to go through 211. So you can click that and then go through the locations and try different ones in your area to see what's available. So I recommend kind of going through that list and seeing the different towns that are listed and trying to find the closest one to you that has an available appointment coming up soon. We know sometimes the appointments are either too far away or not available soon enough. So if that's the case, then you can go back and select to go to a police department if you're going to go that route. But like Usman said, the only appointments that are scheduled directly in BCIS are through 211 childcare. If you're going to go get fingerprinted at a police department, you need to reach out to that police department directly and find out what's their policy for fingerprinting and when do they have appointments available. And every police department and state police troop has different policies and schedules. And they do charge a fee at the police department to collect your fingerprints, which is not covered by OEC like the processing fee is.
And also adding what Mike is saying is, when you do go to police department or state trooper to do your fingerprints, we do not transmit applicant tracking numbers. So you would have to bring all that information with you because otherwise we can't track your fingerprints later on.
That's right. I'm glad you reminded me to highlight that. Any appointment that you go to, you should bring your applicant tracking number with you. Whenever you go to get fingerprinted, bring your applicant tracking number.
So when you do, if I'm gonna go ahead and submit and show you the confirmation page, when I go ahead and submit this, please do print this and just bring this page with you. It has the applicant, so if you're going to state police or going to 211, you can bring this information with you, print the confirmation page. So if they're looking for a applicant tracking number, this is where you're gonna look on the first top. And if you booked it through 211, the address and the time, everything is listed right on our on that confirmation page. So you do want to make sure you bring this page with you when you're scheduling an appointment. This BCI confirmation number is strictly for our system to track the background request that you started. You do not need this for anybody else, but this is strictly for us.
And particularly if you're going to go to a police department, I would recommend printing out the confirmation page from the state police system because that will also include the barcode that goes along with the applicant tracking number.
So this is how you submit your background through our system. And if you do everything right and do fingerprint digitally, the background check will be very fast. But now I'm gonna hand it over to Mike. Mike, you want to show the documentation, or you want me to go ahead dig into the demo? I know there's only 5 minutes left.
Yeah, I think we're getting pretty short on time, so we can go over some of these last items. One thing you can see there that there's an FAQ tab on the left side. And so there are frequently asked questions and answers that are shown directly in BCIS. And so I recommend, checking those out and seeing the information that's there. And we'll continue to update that, as I said, and we'll even go through the questions that are asked in today's presentation to see what should be updated and added to our list. And this is a really common one. We know it's really hard to find fingerprinting appointments. So I wanted to talk a little more about that. So as we just discussed, when you're in BCIS, you can check the locations in your area and see what appointments are coming up in the near future. And then if you can't find an appointment, you can contact a police department in your area or state police barracks and reach out to them directly to find out what their schedule is. There's also the option to contact 211 Childcare to host a session in your area. And the way to do that is at this email address, fingerprinting@ctunitedway.org. And we are increasing the staff that manage the fingerprinting devices and increasing the number of devices so that we'll be able to have more appointments available throughout the state. So that's in process now, and you should see more appointment availability coming soon, so that we're trying to have as many childcare background checks as possible go through 211 Childcare for their fingerprinting. So again, if you'd like to host a session, you can reach out to United Way at this email address, or you can call 211 Childcare. So a few other key takeaways, and we've gone over some of this, but just wanted to reiterate that each individual person that is going to submit their background check does need their own account with their own unique email address. So in the old process, the program director or human resources would manage entering the information for everyone in their program, but with this system, everyone has to have their own account and enter their own information. And as we mentioned, there are a lot of duplicate records in our system, so we're working through that with a number of different ways to correct that. But when you encounter those, it's really important to submit a help desk ticket so that we can fix it for you and let you know when it's been corrected. One other thing that I really wanted to emphasize that we see a lot of questions about time frame, and we know that it's really difficult when you're trying to get someone's background check and there are delays, and we know there are still delays. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that the information does not update immediately in BCIS. Even though you're submitting the fingerprints digitally and you may be submitting the information online through our system, the status needs to go through processing, and then the results need to go through the various background checks that are done and then get sent back to OEC, and then OEC staff have to pull those results out of different databases to enter them into BCIS. So it takes at least days, and usually at least a week or two or more, for the status to update. And then, as we mentioned, paper fingerprint cards take much longer. It takes at least a couple months for the entire process from the time you get your fingerprints done when you're using paper fingerprint cards. So we strongly discourage the use of paper fingerprint cards and really recommend using only digital fingerprints. When digital fingerprints are used, the results can come back to OEC in a matter of days, and then they are manually downloaded and then entered one at a time into the system. So it's important to understand that it's not instantaneous. So we do need your patience, and we appreciate your patience and collaboration with all of this. So lastly, the help desk is a really important tool, especially in the cases of those duplicates when you try to add someone to your roster. If you get an error message that says there's multiple records, please submit a ticket to let us know and we can get it updated. If you have other login issues or other questions or problems with the system, this is the place to get some support from OEC. And you can go to this link, helpdesk.oecit.org, and then click open a new ticket, and then you can enter your information, and we will research the issue for you and get it resolved as quickly as possible. Again, we appreciate your patience. We're getting a lot of questions, so it can take 7 to 10 business days for an issue to get resolved and for us to get it to get back to you. So we appreciate your patience. So we're
Mike, this is Rachel. I just wanted to offer that there have been a number of questions and answers offered in the chat in the Q&A tab, and we do have staff who've been answering them as they've come in. I've also just published a link to the help desk again, so that folks have access to that, as we did have a number of questions. But I wanted to remind folks that there are frequently asked questions available on our website, and we would be updating those based on some of the situations that we're observing here. So thank you so much for your supportive feedback, constructive feedback, and we appreciate your patience.
Great. Thanks so much, Rachel. And thank you again to everyone on the OEC team for their help with this presentation and with BCIS. And again, thank you to everyone in the Connecticut childcare field for your patience and collaborating with us on this transition to make sure we're getting these background checks processed so that we can ensure children are safe in childcare. Have a great night and a great holiday weekend.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.